listen to me now. I know what it feels like when life comes out of nowhere and knocks the wind out of you. You're moving along, doing your best, and then boom, a loss hits you so hard. You're left there staring at the pieces of what used to be. And you start thinking, man, is this it? Is this how my story ends? Let me tell you something, right here and right now. Loss is not the end. It's not the final word over your life. It's not the closing chapter of your story. I know it feels like a full stop, like a period at the end of your sentence, but it's not. It's a comma. It's a pause. It's a pivot point, because what you call loss, God can turn into a setup for your comeback. See, sometimes the very thing that looks like it's destroying you is the thing that's positioning you for greater. I'm talking about doors that slam shut in your face, leaving you confused and angry, only for you to realize later that God was protecting you from something you couldn't see. I'm talking about people who walked away and left you standing there in your pain, and you thought you'd die from heartbreak, but it turns out God was making room for people who will love you better, stand by you stronger, and push you higher. Don't you understand that sometimes a loss is a rescue in disguise? Sometimes God has to let certain things fall apart so that He can build you back up on a stronger foundation. Because if He left you where you were, you'd never grow, you'd never stretch, you'd never discover the depth of strength and faith He's planted inside you. Loss will make you question everything. It'll make you ask God, why me, why now, why this? And God might be silent in that moment, but silence is not absence. Silence is not abandonment. It's just that sometimes He's working behind the scenes, shifting things in ways you can't even imagine. He's setting the stage for your comeback. I've seen people lose jobs they loved, crying rivers of tears because they didn't know how they'd pay the bills. And months later, they're standing in bigger offices with better salaries, doing work that feeds their soul. At the time of the loss, they thought their life was over, but it wasn't over. It was just starting to get good. I've watched relationships crumble, marriages dissolve, friendships fade away, and folks think, there's nothing left for me. But I've also seen those same people rise from the ashes, discovering a deeper joy, stronger boundaries, and new circles of people who respect and value them. The loss broke them, but it also built them. See, the comeback doesn't always happen the way you expect. And it doesn't always happen overnight. You might be sitting there thinking, I've been waiting a long time for my comeback. But let me tell you this, even in the waiting, God is working. Even in the silence, God is moving pieces into place. He's pruning, He's preparing, He's making sure that when you step into your comeback, you're ready for it, and it's ready for you. Loss has a way of stripping away your pride. It humbles you. It shows you who's really in your corner. It makes you cling to God tighter than you ever have before. And sometimes that's the biggest blessing of all, because nothing, and I mean nothing, can shake a person who knows how to lean on God when everything else falls away. Don't you dare count yourself out because you've lost something. Don't you dare decide that your best days are behind you. I'm telling you right now, there is more ahead. There is restoration ahead. There is purpose ahead. Your story's not over because you've suffered loss. It's only getting interesting. You've got to start looking at your scars differently. Stop seeing them as proof of defeat and start seeing them as evidence that you survived, because every scar means you fought and you're still standing. And if you're still standing, then there's still time for your comeback. I don't care how deep the hole feels right now. I don't care how dark the nights have been. God is still in the business of turning graves into gardens, ashes into beauty, mourning into dancing. And He's not finished with you yet, so hold your head up, dry those tears, take another breath, because what you lost might just be the space God needs to bring in something better. Your loss is not the end, it's a setup, a divine setup for the greatest comeback of your life. You think God didn't see what happened to you. You think he missed it, that pain you felt, that betrayal you didn't see coming, that moment when you gave your all and still ended up empty. You think God blinked. No, he saw it all, every second of it. Let me tell you something. There's not a single tear you cried in the dark that went unnoticed. Not one. There's not a single sigh you let out when the weight of life got too heavy that didn't echo in the heavens. God's not blind to your suffering. He's not deaf to your pain. He doesn't forget. He doesn't overlook. He keeps account. You may have been let down by people who promised they'd always be there. You may have lost time, lost years chasing something that never came to be. You may have loved with all your heart and got broken in return, but God was watching, and not just watching like some distant observer. No. He was present, he was near, he was collecting every moment of your loss, storing it up, not for judgment, but for justice. See, when you lose something, people might walk past you like your grief doesn't matter, like your brokenness is invisible. They'll tell you to get over it, move on, toughen up, but God doesn't move past you. He stays right there, right in the thick of your disappointment, right in the center of your silence, and he's keeping track. Not because he needs to remember, but because restoration requires record. He restores what the enemy stole, not in random bits, but in measured, intentional fullness. That's why the word says he'll repay. That's why it says he'll give back double. He's not guessing at what you lost, he's been counting. Carefully, precisely, you think your time was wasted. It wasn't. You think your efforts were in vain. They weren't. You think your love, your loyalty, your long nights of prayer and patience were thrown into the void. No, they weren't. God was watching. He saw what it cost you to stay when it would have been easier to walk. He saw what it cost you to forgive when everything in you wanted to harden. He saw you choosing faith when fear would have been the easier road. That's what makes his restoration so powerful. It's not generic, it's personal, it's tailored to every inch of the pain you endured. He doesn't just hand out blessings like random prizes. He delivers restoration with accuracy. He gives beauty for ashes. Not in spite of ashes, for ashes. That means what burned, what fell apart, what collapsed becomes the ground he builds your restoration on. And listen, just because the world stopped talking about what you lost doesn't mean God did. Just because people stopped asking how you're doing doesn't mean God forgot how deep that wound went. People move on, but God leans in. People forget, but God writes it down. He keeps account of the tears, the setbacks, the betrayals, the dreams that got put on a shelf and started collecting dust. You might be thinking, but it's been so long, nothing's changed. I still feel like something's missing. Let me tell you, delay is not denial. Just because you haven't seen the restoration yet doesn't mean it's not coming. What God promises, he delivers. But he delivers it when it's time, when the ground is ready, when your spirit is strong enough to carry the weight of the blessing, when what he's returning to you won't just fill your hands, but it'll overflow into others. You see, when God restores, he doesn't just give it back, he multiplies it. He breathes on it, he transforms it. What the world calls payback, God calls purpose. He's not just in the business of returning what was taken, he's in the business of building you up, so what was taken doesn't even compare to what's coming. So if you're sitting there wondering if God even remembers what you lost, hear me, he does. He remembers the innocence. He remembers the hope. He remembers the years you kept silent just to keep the peace. He remembers when you broke down in the shower and whispered prayers that never made it out loud. He keeps account because his love for you is that detailed, that deep. You are not forgotten. What you lost is not forgotten. What you fought for is not forgotten. God is keeping score, and he's not done writing. What you lost was real, but what's coming back? It's going to be greater, stronger, fuller than you ever imagined. Just you wait. Let me talk to you tonight about something you might not want to hear, but you need to hear. Because we all got this picture in our heads of how restoration is supposed to look. We think if we lost money, God's gonna drop a pile of cash in our laps. If we lost a relationship, God's gonna bring that same person crawling back. If we lost a job, He's gonna hand us back the exact same title, the same office, the same chair we were sitting in. But hear me when I say this, God is not obligated to restore your life the way you expect. Sometimes restoration comes wrapped in packages you'd never choose. Sometimes it shows up in places you never thought to look. And if you're not careful, you'll miss your blessing because it didn't come dressed in the outfit you were waiting on. See, we pray for God to bring things back, and then when He tries to give us new things, we resist it because it doesn't look familiar. We're clinging to what we lost, trying to resurrect what's dead, begging Him to give back the same thing, the same way. But God doesn't operate like that. He doesn't always do reruns. He's in the business of new seasons, new doors, new levels. I've seen people pray for God to bring back an old love, crying rivers over somebody who left them. And when God tries to send them someone healthier, kinder, stronger, they push it away because it doesn't feel the same. Let me tell you something. God's not trying to send you the same. He's trying to send you better. I've seen folks lose a job and pray every day to get that same job back, only to discover months later that God had a new door waiting. A door that paid more, valued them more, challenged them to grow, but they almost missed it because they were stuck looking backward. Sometimes restoration looks like a detour. It looks like a different city, a different calling, a different circle of people. And it can feel scary because it's unfamiliar, but God is not interested in just giving you back what you lost. He's interested in transforming you through what you lost so that what you gain next can fit the person you're becoming. You've got to be willing to let go of the old blueprint. You've got to release your grip on the way you thought life was supposed to go. Because the longer you hold on to that mental picture of how it should look, the longer you'll delay the blessing God's trying to hand you right now. There are some of you listening to me right now who think God hasn't restored you. You're saying, "Where's my blessing? Where's my breakthrough? Where's my turnaround?" But if you'd open your eyes, you might realize that restoration has already started. It just doesn't look like what you imagined. Maybe you lost friends, but God gave you peace. Maybe you lost status, but God gave you humility. Maybe you lost money, but God gave you wisdom. And let me tell you, sometimes that wisdom is worth more than every dollar you ever lost. Restoration isn't always external. It's not always flashy. Sometimes it happens on the inside. Sometimes God restores your mind before He restores your circumstances. Sometimes He heals your spirit before He changes your situation. Because what good is it to have everything back on the outside if you're still broken on the inside? I'm talking about God restoring your joy, your faith, your hope, your ability to wake up in the morning and believe that good things are still possible. That's restoration too, and sometimes He gives you back things you didn't even know you lost. A sense of purpose, a new vision, a voice you'd silenced because life tried to convince you you had nothing left to say. So don't get discouraged because restoration hasn't shown up in the way you pictured. Don't tell God how to bless you. Let Him be God. Let Him surprise you. Let Him blow your mind with something you never even thought to ask for. Because what He's planning for you might not look like what you lost, but I promise you, it will be better. It'll fit your future, not your past. It'll heal places in you that the old thing could never reach. So keep your heart open, keep your eyes open, because restoration, it may look different than what you expect. But it's coming, and when it comes, you'll understand why it had to happen the way it did. I need you to hear me right now. I need you to lean in close, because I'm about to tell you the one thing that separates people who stay stuck in loss from people who step into restoration. It's faith. Faith is not just a word we toss around in church or print on coffee mugs. Faith is a force. Faith is the spark that sets restoration in motion, because you can't sit in your pain forever and expect things to change if you don't believe God can change them. See, you can be surrounded by the promise of restoration, but if you don't believe it's for you, you'll never reach out and grab it. You'll watch it pass you by, because faith is the bridge between what's broken and what's about to be rebuilt. Some folks think restoration just happens automatically. They think God's just gonna drop blessings out of the sky while they sit there complaining. Let me tell you something, it doesn't work like that. You've got to participate. You've got to stand up in the middle of your mess and say, I still believe. You've got to speak life over places that look dead. You've got to wake up every morning and declare, what I lost does not define me. What I lost will not be the end of my story. Because faith is not just positive thinking. Faith is action. Faith is choosing to keep walking even when you don't see the road. Faith is sowing seeds when the ground looks dry. Faith is showing up for the fight even when you feel like you've got nothing left. God responds to faith. The Bible says without faith it's impossible to please Him. Not unlikely, impossible. Because faith is how we agree with heaven. Faith is how we align ourselves with what God wants to do. Faith is how we unlock doors that have been shut for years. I've seen people lose everything, and I mean everything. Health, finances, relationships, but somehow in the middle of the rubble they stood up and said, God's not finished with me yet. And you watch those same people, months later, years later, walking in blessings they never imagined. Why? Because they kept their faith alive. Let me tell you, life will give you every reason to stop believing, every reason to quit. People will tell you, be realistic. Circumstances will scream at you, it's over, but that's when faith has to kick in. Because faith isn't built for easy days. Faith is built for the storm. Faith says, even though I can't see it, I know God is working. Faith says, even though I feel empty, I believe God is preparing to fill me up again. Faith says, even though I've lost some things, I believe God will restore me in ways I haven't even imagined yet. You've got to talk to yourself sometimes. You've got to stand in front of the mirror and remind yourself who you are. You've got to speak out loud because the enemy is hoping you'll stay silent. He's hoping you'll stay in that place of defeat, thinking God forgot about you. But when you open your mouth and declare your faith, you shift the atmosphere. You wake up angels. You put the enemy on notice that you're not giving up that easily. I'm not saying it's easy. Faith costs something. Faith means standing when it would be easier to lie down. Faith means lifting your hands when all you want to do is cry. Faith means praising God not just for what He's already done, but for what you trust He's about to do. Faith doesn't deny reality. Faith looks reality in the face and says, you don't get the final word. Maybe your bank account says empty, but faith says overflow is coming. Maybe your heart says lonely, but faith says God's preparing connections you haven't met yet. Maybe your past says damaged goods, but faith says God makes all things new. Faith activates restoration because it positions your spirit to receive. God can't pour new wine into old wineskins. He can't pour fresh blessings into a vessel that's closed off in bitterness and fear. You've got to open yourself up and say, God, I'm ready for whatever you've got next. Some of you have been through so much loss that you're afraid to believe again. You're scared that if you hope, you'll just get hurt all over again. But let me tell you, faith is worth the risk, because you're not trusting in yourself. You're trusting in the one who sees the end from the beginning. the one who promises that what the locusts have eaten, he will restore. So stir up your faith, dust it off. Speak it out. Even if your voice shakes, say it anyway. God is restoring me. What I lost will not be the end of my story. My comeback is on the way. Because when faith rises, restoration follows. Every time, so hear me tonight, you may have lost some things. You may have cried some tears nobody else knows about. You may have stood in seasons of emptiness, wondering if anything good could come out of what you've been through. But let me remind you, loss is not the end. It's a setup for a comeback. God sees what you've lost. He's kept account of every tear, every silent prayer, every piece of your heart that got broken along the way. And he's not just planning to give back what you lost. He's planning to give you something greater, something stronger, something brand new. It might not look like what you expect. It might not come in the same shape, the same place, the same people. But I promise you this, it will be better because faith activates restoration. Faith unlocks doors you thought were closed forever. Faith dares to believe that God can take your ashes and turn them into beauty, that he can take what was stolen and give it back pressed down, shaken together, running over. So don't stay stuck in yesterday. Don't let what you lost convince you your best days are behind you. Your story isn't over. God's still writing. Stand tall, lift your eyes, keep your faith alive, because what you lost, God will restore. And when he does, it's gonna be worth it all.